My name is Hannah Patrick, and through my middle years program personal project, I decided to learn Krav Maga. Krav Maga is a self-defense system used in the Israeli army, and Krav Maga teaches you real defenses for any fight you may encounter. My guiding question throughout this project was, what is the importance of self-defense in today's society? And throughout months of training, I have finally come to the conclusion that self-defense, in whatever way, can be important to everyone and anyone. So I first learned about Krav Maga when my mom told me about it. She'd always told me that self-defense was a very valuable thing to pursue, and I strongly agreed. It's hard to come to the realization of this, but it's very true that in today's society there are a lot of uncomfortable things that happen, and I believe you should always be prepared. So my goal was to learn level 1, or the basic principles of Krav Maga. Level 1 was to take roughly 6 months to complete, focusing on the global context, fairness, and development. Students will explore rights and responsibilities, the relationship between communities, sharing finite resources with other people and with other living things, access to equal opportunities, peace, and conflict resolution. I chose this because I was interested in solving conflicts, whether that was on a large scale, like learning how to navigate the military system, or on a smaller scale, like learning how to escape a fight. Taking Krav Maga was a big step for me, since the only prior knowledge I had at the time was 1 year of karate when I was 5. So I had to do a lot of research before signing up for classes, because I wanted to make sure that my body could handle it. Luckily, I found out that Krav Maga works for everyone. And your height, your weight, and your gender has nothing to do with you training. So one thing that was a struggle with not having much prior knowledge of martial arts was that I would learn a technique in class but not fully understand how or why it originated. So this was why I started to do my research. So one person that really helped me with my techniques was Amy Lichtenfield, the founder of Krav Maga. Amy developed and refined his own methods of self-defense and face-to-face combat, all while training Israeli soldiers in those same techniques. In 1963, when Amy finally retired from the military service, he had already begun to modify the style with the goal that it could be used by anyone. Another way that I researched, and something that really helped me guide my way through my unit question, was interviewing my peers. So to find out what society thinks, you must ask the members of society. So all 3 people I interviewed stated that they thought self-defense was a very valuable skill to learn. Always use your words first, but when a fight turns physical, self-defense is a very valuable skill to learn. What Keandra said is very true in my opinion, is when you're in a conflict, it's never a good idea to resort to physical means, but more often than not, it happens, and you should always be prepared. So one thing that I found interesting throughout my research was that every person I interviewed stated that self-defense was very valuable to learn, but they also stated that they would never take a self-defense class. Upon digging deeper, I found out that this was because nobody was comfortable doing that. And throughout my months of training, I have come to the realization that Krav Maga will never be comfortable. Self-defense classes force you to think about things that may not always be easy to comprehend, like situations that you might be put into. However, I would rather be prepared. So in Krav Maga, there are 4 basic principles to every technique. Number 1, address the threat. Number 2, simultaneous or near simultaneous counter-strike. Number 3, eliminate the danger. And number 4, escape out when possible. Number 4, escape when possible, is the most essential part to any technique. When you're in an uncomfortable situation, get out when you can, if it's safe, of course. So every principle is important, but not if you don't use it to your advantage. This was something that really resonated with me. After hearing that, it was easier for me to understand the real purpose of Krav Maga, and that is defense, not offense. So I can apply this to other areas of my life by realizing that conflict should never be created and only solved. And this is exactly why I chose the global context, fairness, and development, because I really wanted to focus on peace and conflict resolution. So the criteria for my project is as follows. 1, I interviewed 3 people on the importance of self-defense in today's society. I did this to guide my unit question. I can demonstrate and explain the basic principles of Krav Maga and why they exist. This
Run away! Now's not the time to go, dude, that was really cool. Get away.
This was essential to understanding self-defense. 3, I received my first belt certificate after testing. Testing consisted of defending against basic choke holds, the proper way to kick, and the proper way to punch. 4, I will complete 2 or more classes a week that last 1.5 hours. This was the perfect amount of class time to learn level 1 in 6 months. 5, I have a video that tracks my progress with at least 5 entries. 6, I can demonstrate and explain the basic principles of a weapons defense and why they exist. This was actually not something level 1, but it really pushed me to take my training to a higher level, especially because I am pursuing my Krav Maga education after the project is done. So this was my plan to complete level 1 of Krav Maga on time. Step 1, sign up for Krav Maga classes. This was easy and the start of my Krav Maga adventure. Step 2, take an introductory class. From process journal number 1, I realized very quickly that to become skilled in Krav Maga, you have to commit inside and outside a class. To succeed, you have to give your all. Overcoming that mentally, I realized it's a very intense skill physically too. Step 3, begin to take women's only self-defense classes. Also from process journal number 1.
Now, what we do, I don't tell you guys what the battles to get. Okay? Because
During the training session, I was doing a stress drill, which required a quick response to simulate a real-life situation. Because of that, I had no time to put on my protective gloves. It was a necessary drill, and I'm very glad I got to be in class that day. However, I scraped my hands and had to miss training the next few days for my own safety. It was difficult missing classes because I knew I wasn't gaining anything. Once I got back to class, it was time to give my all again. Step 4, attend first normal Krav Maga class. Also from process journal number 2, now more than ever I have been struggling with my confidence levels. Krav Maga is both an intense skill physically and mentally. Step 5, research the Israeli army and how Krav Maga is used in the military. This helped me better understand what I was learning, but it was difficult to find good reliable sources. This was cleared up though when I talked to my mentor about it. He actually recommended that I research Amy Lichtenfield, the founder of Krav Maga. Step 6, take my white belt test and receive my white belt certificate. This actually happened in February as this was the closest available time, but this was a very intense 4-hour test that I gained a lot from. So step 7, do an advanced class to experience other defense techniques. From process journal number 3, previously I was uncomfortable with training with military personnel, but now that I've gotten a chance to train with each of them, I feel more confident when I'm at class. Step 8, interview 3 people on the importance of self-defense. This was actually done at the beginning of my project, although I planned on doing it in February because I found it more logical to see how other people thought of self-defense before I used that to navigate my way through my project. So some of my steps went out of order, and that was because I think it was more logical, or there were issues in scheduling. However, I mainly stuck to a strict schedule of attending 2 or more classes a week and submitting my assignments on time. So this helped me successfully complete level 1 of Krav Maga in 6 months while avoiding tons of stress. So my supervisor also helped me stay on track, definitely with this. The global context that best fit my project was fairness and development, like mentioned before, focusing on peace and conflict resolution. The principles of Krav Maga focus on peace and conflict resolution as well. And completed level 1 of Krav Maga really pushed me to learn more about it because Krav Maga does not teach you offensive techniques unless it would be absolutely necessary in a tough situation. With this, my criteria and my goal in mind, I was able to take and complete and pass my test on February 6th. It was a 4-hour test which I had encompassed everything that I knew about Krav Maga. I demonstrated everything from the first day I was in there to the day right up before the test. So my project became very challenging when I couldn't find any sources online about the techniques I would do in class. This forced me to become a better reflective learner by thinking about how my technique would come about by myself. I can use this skill now to further my education. I've really explored the workings of my mind being in Krav Maga. Throughout my project and time in Krav Maga classes, I had seen many new faces come and go. Most of the people that I trained with were previously in the military and around 30 years older, so it was kind of intimidating. Because of this, I struggled with making good companions because I didn't really relate to the people around me. However, I realized as I got further into my training that we were all there to learn the same thing, no matter our height, weight, gender, or previous experience. We were all there to learn Krav Maga. And coming to that realization, it was easier for me to communicate with my teammates and even my instructor. I also had to learn to become comfortable with my supervisor, Ms. Curran, because she really helped me work through all the technical parts of my project, and I learned it's essential to keep in contact even when I'm not in a direct meeting with her. So my Krav Maga test, it was very physically intense. Ultimately, my product encompassed all aspects I learned from Krav Maga within around 6 months. I had to use all of my knowledge from beginners, advanced, and women's Krav classes. Fully understanding what I do in class was essential to passing the test. I successfully interviewed 3 people on the importance of self-defense in today's society, and that helped me to better understand. I can now demonstrate and explain the basic principles of Krav Maga and why they exist. Number 1, address the threat. This will be your natural reaction. Number 2, simultaneous or near simultaneous counter-strike. This is often a straight punch or a kick. Eliminate the danger. This can be any combative you could think of and whatever gets the attacker off. And then lastly, escape. Because Krav Maga is about conflict resolution and not creating problems, this is the most important part and the real purpose of any self-defense technique. So I received my certificate for my first belt testing. I attended all of my classes a week unless I was out of state or sick. This made me very determined. I wanted to go to class every day so I could be sure I could pass my test. However, because of school and other responsibilities, I couldn't. I found that 2 classes, though, was a sufficient amount. I took video of my progress and found it very helpful because I could look back on it and really see what I did wrong on a technique. So I really learned a lot from myself during this project. And so I could look at it from a different perspective. I can now demonstrate and explain the basic principles of a weapons defense and why they exist. 1. Redirect the line of fire. It's never a good idea to be in the line of fire, and this should always be the first thing on your mind, and you want to continue to keep yourself out of the line of fire. 2. Take control of the weapon. When you have control of the weapon, it's harder for danger to come to you. 3. Attack. The meat of the defense. In essence, it is your eliminate the threat of the basic Krav Maga principles. 4. Take away the weapon. Once the weapon is taken away, you know that you are at the advantage. So completing this project has made me realize the full extent of how important self-defense is. As fairness and development is my global context, I've come to realize that conflict resolution is more powerful than staying in a fight. Throughout my project, I have also become a more reflective learner, a risk taker, and an inquirer. Reflective because I was forced to push my mind and think about the ways that the techniques I would learn would actually benefit me. A risk taker because every day in class I was faced with new challenges and I overcame them all by myself. An inquirer because when I wouldn't know how a technique would come about, I would have to inquire myself. So I can apply this to other areas in my education too. As I continue my schooling, I hope to use my mental skills and my thinking skill set now to further my education. Next time I'm doing a big project, I will know that having a good understanding is what's really going to benefit me in the long run. So in conclusion, I've had so much fun being in Krav Maga and training with my instructor and my teammates, and even if at sometimes it could be a little bit intimidating. So I plan on continuing to pursue my Krav Maga education even after this project is done, because it's really had a great influence on me. And I've even had some peer influence. Recently, I convinced my brother to join Krav Maga with me as he realizes the importance of self-defense too. So I hope to keep having a blast in training, and that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Yeah. You guys go and switch on your own. When the guy on the ground starts getting too tired, make a switch. Oh, yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah.